who are here today, and we'll get started with this. Public Safety Committee will come to order. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Would you please call the roll? Present.
Jones, Ray, House Jones, Kelly,
Present.
Slide,
Present.
and Scott.
Councilman Joe Jones is excused. He has some other event he has to attend. Thank you very much. The Safety Director called me this morning to tell me, the Mayor's Chief of Staff called me this morning to tell me that the Chief of Fire had been involved in an accident and that he was over at Metro Hospital. I understand he is not severely hurt. Let's hope and pray that that's not the case. The director indicated he might be late for today's meeting, and I understand that all too well. So who is here representing the director's office? Anyone officially representing the Safety Director's office? Well, Chief, come on up then. Thank you. And again, I would ask all to keep the fire chief, Chief Luke, in your prayers. So we know how quickly things can happen, and not for the good either. So, Chief, before I get into the pieces of legislation that are here, I want to ask you directly something that has concerned me greatly as of Monday night. First, I want to thank, I guess, it'd be the safety, I don't know if I should start with the mayor, the safety director, you, whoever, as it pertains to the presence of CPD at the council meeting on Monday night. It was not a pleasant experience once again, but I learned something after the meeting which troubled me greatly. I was told by 3 officers that the protesters tried to bring into City Hall contraband that would be used against council members, that was going to be thrown against council members, specifically fruit. And it was confiscated, I was told, at the security desks. What I don't understand, well, first of all, I need to confirm that, but because I've heard 3 police officers tell me that people tried to bring this contraband in to be used as projectiles against council members and the mayor. But it was confiscated, and what would concern me greatly is that they were still allowed to come in after the contraband was confiscated. Can you tell me why they were allowed to come into the building after the stuff was confiscated from them?
Good morning, Councilman Polensik and all the members of the City Council. Councilman, I'll have to look further into that. That information that you just articulated was not given to me. I was not briefed on anything of that nature.
Okay.
I'm very proud of the officers that are assigned to detail here at City Hall to make sure contraband or whatever it is that shouldn't be allowed in here is stopped.
Okay.
But that information that you just, again, just told me about is news to me, to be honest with you, and be very candid. Again, it did not make its way to my office. I'll have to look further into it.
Okay, that troubles me in itself because you, of all people, should have been notified, you and the safety director. And I'm going to ask the safety director the same question if, in fact, he was aware of it. But I'm aware of it. And because I just want to make it clear, and we're going to make it very clear. Anybody that throws anything at the mayor, a member of council, they need to get arrested immediately. Because if not, it's going to be the World Wrestling Federation in that room. I can tell you that right now. Because there's some of us here that are not going to take that. We're not going to take that. And all my years here, I've never, ever even thought of my safety or the safety of our employees or the mayor or members of the mayor's staff having to worry about anything like that. And I was just appalled when I heard it. And again, I know the safety director has arrived, but I think he's making a pit stop. But I need confirmation as well if he was aware of it, because if he wasn't aware of it, then I'm really troubled, because I know what happened. I know what happened because it was confiscated. And their intent was allegedly to throw it at either the mayor or members of council who were not paying attention to what they were saying, which I find very troubling. Okay, I'm gonna proceed. At this point, I'm gonna wait. Here's the director, and I'm gonna ask him. No, that's all right, Director. First of all, can you just briefly update us on the chief of fire?
Chief is doing all right. I was at the hospital. I went over there before I came into the City Hall. He was on the passenger side. He was on the passenger side. He was being driven to pick up his truck from the shop. Another firefighter was driving him. Car kind of came out of nowhere, T-boned him. The chief's vehicle was totaled. Some lacerations to his knee, a bruise to his head. The airbags deployed. He's in good spirits. The person who struck the chief's vehicle said that he just didn't see it, wasn't paying attention, as far as we know. But that's the information that we have. There was no intoxication or anything like that.
The other firefighter, what's the condition of the other firefighter?
He's doing all right. He had a bruise to his wrist from the impact.
Yes.
Pressure from the steering wheel, I believe. But he's all right as well. They'll be released from the hospital today.
Okay.
And without any other, based off the information that I have right now. But I told the chief to take a couple days off.
That's good news. That was good news. I appreciate you calling me this morning. The mayor's chief of staff called this morning on your behalf, and I appreciate that. As I mentioned to the chief prior to our start here, first of all, I wanted to thank, whether it be the mayor, you, chief, whoever, for the deployment that took place at the council meeting on Monday night of CPD. Because, again, it was another ugly meeting of protesters with their comments and making the council members in the back row feel very, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, the council members in the back row are in a very difficult situation in the body there, in the council floor plan. But what I did learn after the meeting, as I indicated to the chief, there were, by 3 officers, that the protesters attempted to bring in contraband in the city hall to be used as projectiles against possibly the mayor, members of council, and it was confiscated. Now, the chief just indicated that he was not aware of that. But I'm aware of it, and my colleagues are aware of it. What I don't understand is someone is trying to bring in projectiles, specifically, I was told, rotten fruit, to throw at either the mayor or members of council. If that was confiscated, which it was, I'm told, why were they still allowed into the building?
So I have to agree with the chief. I did hear that there was someone who was suspected of bringing it in. To my knowledge, nothing was seized. To my knowledge, I know that the officers, of course, exercise extreme diligence to make sure that members of the council are safe. There were movements that had happened within the Division of Police through their training to make sure that it didn't happen. But to my knowledge, I'm not aware of anything that was seized, Chair.
Okay. Well, I was told it was confiscated. They would not allow it into the building. And again, I appreciate that, but I want to make sure that there's a protocol. Anybody who's trying to bring something in that could be utilized against the mayor, members of the administration, members of council and the staff, not only do I want it confiscated, but I don't want them allowed in the building.
Chair, I'll tell you this, and I think the chief would agree, and I hope that this gets echoed throughout the city and the county. Anybody who enters this building with contraband anybody who brings anything in here that they're going to use to as a projectile to embarrass or to cause harm will suffer the most severe consequences that we can deliver under the law.
That's all.
Hands down.
That's all I need to hear, and that's all members of council need to hear. Thank you, Director. We're going to start off with the three pieces of legislation and then get the update from the various divisions. Without objection, ordinance number 2023, ordinance number 1023-2023 by council members Polensek and Griffin by departmental request, emergency ordinance to amend section 433.09, 605.04, 607.03, 607.04, 607.13, 617.02, and 625.05 of the codified ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, as amended by various ordinances to repeal section 607.13 and 607.18 of the codified ordinances. Approved by the Director of Safety, It first came to us on September 18, 2023. Approved by Director of Public Safety, approved by Director of Finance. There is no legal objection. Director.
Thank you, Chair. Members of council, ordinance number 1023-2023, if passed by council, would amend various sections of the codified ordinances of the City of Cleveland in accordance with Senate Bill 288 and other current laws of the State of Ohio. Codified ordinance section 433.09 pertains to operating a motor vehicle while using an electronic wireless communication device. This section is being amended in accordance with Senate Bill 288 to address the danger of distracted driving by prohibiting the operation of a motor vehicle while physically holding or supporting a wireless device with any part of a person's body. There are exceptions to this prohibition outlined in the codified ordinance sections, such as for the operators of emergency vehicles, making emergency calls to law enforcement, fire department, or other emergency agencies/entities, use of the speakerphone function, use of a voice-operated or hands-free operation, and using technology that physically or electronically connects to the motor vehicle. The full list of these exceptions is included in Codified Ordinance Section 433.09, Part B. Codified Ordinance Section 433.09, Part C indicates the penalties for violation of this section. The first offense of this section is an unclassified misdemeanor, and the court can impose a fine up to $150, which can be waived if the offender successfully completes a distracted driving safety course and submits this evidence to the court. Subsequent offenses within 2 years of the original violation can result in higher fines and license suspension. Other codified ordinance sections that have been updated to reflect current laws of the State of Ohio include disturbing a public meeting, that's section 605.04, drug abuse, controlled substance possession or use, section 607.03, possessing drug abuse instruments, section 607.04, possession, manufacture, and sale of drug paraphernalia, section 607.17, sale to and use by minors alcohol, and securing public accommodations, section 617.02, and changing petty theft to misdemeanor theft under section 625.05. Chair, I believe that Assistant Director Shatner from the Law Department sent over some detailed explanations. He cannot be here today, but I'm hoping that this here, if other members of council need copies, we can get it to you, but it hopefully explains more detail what he would speak to with regard to these sections.
Okay. Chief, do you have anything you care to comment on in this?
To Chair, to the council members, I support the
So in
ordinances.
essence, what this does, it mirrors the action that the Ohio legislature has taken, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Questions of the committee? Mr. Slife.
Thank you, and I know that this was one that we had discussed last year, and I will just say that I understand the kind of the intent of mirroring municipal law with state law, but the document we were provided included the rationale from the sponsors of the change of the law in Columbus, and I'll just say that today. In Columbus, there's an attempt by the Ohio legislature to override a veto, that's just basically in the culture wars. Like, I'm not on board with necessarily assuming that everything that comes out of the Ohio General Assembly is good and reasonable. The one that all of this by and large is fine, though. The one that I think still I have a couple questions about is the disturbing a lawful meeting. So I want to just be clear. In the current Cleveland Municipal Code, under disturbing a lawful meeting, as I read this is, so I'm on page, well, it's page 5 for me. 605.04, disturbing a lawful meeting, it's a couple pages in. No person with purpose to prevent, this is the current, as the law currently reads, no person with purpose to prevent or disrupt a lawful meeting, procession, or gathering shall do either of the following. 1, do any act which obstructs or interferes with the due conduct of such meeting, procession, or gathering. 2, make any utterance, gesture, or display which outrages the sensibilities of the group. So I just want to be clear on what our current law is, because I might have some discomfort just with what the law is. Suppose there is the like the Feast of the Assumption in Little Italy, a religious procession, and someone were to, on the sidelines, make a outrageous anti-Catholic display. As I read it under current law, that could be a 4th-degree misdemeanor. Is that correct? I guess to either the safety director or the law department.
So just, I think that's,
Just on that point, that's not a meeting.
sure. I think that what's important about this
Yeah, it's a
section-
procession.
Yeah, but it's not a meeting. It's not a public meeting. There's a difference. But I'll let the director respond.
Yeah, I think that what's important at this section, as Assistant Law Director puts in his notes at the second bullet point, is that the violation is committed with the intent to disturb or disquiet an assemblage of people met for religious worship, and this is the key part, at a tax-exempt place of worship, and disturbs the order and solemnity of the assemblage. If they are, Feast of the Assumption, there are certain permits that get pulled for that. This here is so that people in their church, in their mosque, in their tax-exempt place of worship can be free from
Sure.
that.
And I think that the changes, the new language speaking to that specifically, because it says at a tax-exempt place of worship, that if you are to disturb a religious gathering at a tax-exempt place of worship, which to me, if you just walk what we saw in South Carolina, if anything, is just trespassing. I understand that this would raise that to a first-degree misdemeanor. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the existing law. If a religious gathering is happening in the public sphere, say at the Free Stamp, does this idea that making any utterance, gesture, or display which outrages the sensibilities of the group seems so vague, and I almost wonder if there's First Amendment concerns that would still only be a 4th-degree misdemeanor. But it's just surprising to me that that's how the law is written, and given my skepticism of what's going on in Columbus, I'm wondering how we got to that in the first place. And I know that's a big question, and perhaps I can get off of it because it's beyond what we're actually being asked to amend today. But I have concerns that the current law could have First Amendment concerns as it relates to religious gatherings in the public sphere, which, let me be clear, I find this sort of behavior completely objectionable and offensive, but people do have the right to assemble for religious reasons, and people also have the right to free speech, and I don't know how we prioritize one over the other.
So I know the chief has a point to make, but the definition that you read, had it in my head. It's the definition of a type of speech as defined by the United States Supreme Court. There is a balancing test that is applied that the Supreme Court gives in this case. I believe it involves like Hustler magazine. I can look up the actual name of the case, but there is a test that is applied to speech to determine if it is violative of the definition of that of the type of speech addressed in the ordinance.
Okay.
If I can as well, to the councilman, to the chair, Councilman Slife. And for me, I'm coming from a more practical standpoint, also applying the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, and our ordinances and so forth. In a situation that you articulated, about the Feast of the Assumption and the parade and so forth, and someone makes an utterance and so forth, that bothers the sensibility of those there. Obviously, if that was an issue, our officers would respond, as you know, and again, from a practical standpoint. With the gathered information, supervisor would respond, and at that particular time, we have to weigh that. Was that free speech? And if it's free speech, we make sure that we allow the free speech, make sure folks are separated, make sure there's no issues relative to the safety of those making those particular speeches and the folks that are there participating in the parade. So again, from a practical standpoint, we have to look at it and the test that the director just talked about. We just don't automatically arrest someone and come and make a report because someone utters something. That happens all the time. So we do take into consideration the Constitution and also First Amendment right to first speech.
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
I'll just end it by saying I appreciate the information. I'm not trying to be obstructive. I just want us. I want to be a little cautious and make sure that we're asking these questions when we are aligning municipal law with state law, because there are many in our state house who seem more interested in regulating behavior than in protecting the First Amendment. And I don't want us to end up in our own First Amendment lawsuit because we are just trying to match First Amendment violations in Columbus. Thank you.
Any other questions without objection? You do? Yes.
Thank you. Through the chair to the director, just following up with my colleague, I'm a vote no on this because when he was saying, I mean, the whole thing about protests, civil unrest, making people, and the subjective nature of interpretation of that from I would say elected officials, so things of that nature. I think it is very harmful, and those in Columbus are not our friends. And in this time where there is a lot of upheaval when it comes to how we enforce our laws, it's very interesting on who is usually subjected to the harsher terms of things. And that is just something that I cannot, if there, can be a case made that this truly will be something that will be enforced equitably and things, and having the actual legal backing to show that. But history has proven to us that when it comes to things of civil unrest, as we are just leaving or just the three-year anniversary of January 6th, we see very clearly that when it comes to protests and things that are destructive, we treat people very differently. And yes, there have been over 300 people who have been convicted in that realm, but again, it was way more than 300 people there. So I'll say that. So with that, and I know it is grouped in with this, but I'm going to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Starr.
Chair, if I may, because the councilwoman wasn't here, I just want to make sure that again, to reiterate, that this change to section 605.04, it only applies to disturbance at a tax-exempt place of worship and disturbs the order of that assembly. So this is like what would happen inside of a church or a mosque. This is not related to a civil unrest or a public area.
Thank you, Director. Councilman Starr.
Thank you, Chair.
Through the chair to the director, thank you for that. But even when, I guess this is a question. Through the chair to the director, do we know what was the motivation from this update or change in disturbance of a lawful meeting? What was the legislative intent? Or do we know what request or who it came from to actually get this in? That's my question.
I do not have the legislative history. Just the clarification from the law department on this section.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But even in that, I will say, at times it's dependent on who you know in positions of power of what you can get. And I'm going to just leave it at that, and I'm still going to vote no. Thank you.
I want to correct myself because I don't want to, I try to be as honest and transparent on the table. I didn't realize it was double-sided. And what the assistant director put here is that the sponsor of the change provided with the following rationale, and I think the first paragraph is probably the most relevant, is that in the last few years we've realized just how vulnerable our right to practice religion is. The state must keep steps to ensure the First Amendment right to freedom of religion is never infringed upon, no matter the circumstances, and this bill helps to do that. So it seems as if, and there's other information there, that it is to safeguard the worship and religious practices of individuals in their facilities of worship, their tax-exempt facilities of worship.
Thank you,
And
Director.
just to follow up, who was the sponsor of that? Do you have it?
It just
It just tells you
well,
generally.
it's in quotes and it said Johnson. I don't know.
Okay.
Johnson. You were
Yeah.
down there, so I.
Through the chair, through the chair,
know.
thank you.
Thank
Through the
you.
chair. Councilman Starr.
Thank you, Chairperson, as well as members of the Safety Committee. Just a couple questions I definitely wanted to ask regarding this ordinance. Do we have any data that is provided with drivers that are operating a motor vehicle, possibly on their cell phone? And when I mean data, do we have any information that shows how many tickets have been given out within the last year or two regarding this issue? And then also break down more details from just the demographics of age, possibly race, zip codes, just so I can get clarification of understanding operating a vehicle on a cell phone or electronic device. Like, I understand this new generation is a little bit different, but safety is always a top priority for me. But also I want to understand the focus from those different points that probably compel for this to be amended or changed. So through the chair, basically to the table, director and chief, do we have any data regarding drivers operating a motor vehicle using any electronic device technology from tickets or anything standpoint?
Chief?
To the chair, Councilman Starr, I don't have that information in front of us, but we can provide information from the City of Cleveland Division of Police, specifically on your question about data associated with distracting driving. I can find that information out.
Yes.
And if I may, like we will have the 2023 annual report that's going to come out, and it will lay out those types of citations. But the data that we would look for statewide would be maybe not as granular, Councilman, through the chair, as you're asking, but the NHTSA, National Highway Safety Traffic Association, would have that data, and they come out with their own annual reports, I believe, that would speak to the distracted driving. And I mean, as we opened up this meeting today, we talked about, you know, the fire chief is in the hospital from a driver who didn't see. I don't want to get into speculation, but I would imagine that, you know, that those types of accidents happen and may have contributed to this.
Thank you. Councilman Starr?
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. But also, through the chair, I definitely would say, can we look at some data where we have accidents that have taken place and there has been a judicial ruling that this person possibly was on their cell phone from a judge standpoint? Can we look into some of that data too? Because Chair, I definitely want to make sure I see that data before I make a vote on this, just so I can get clarification on that point of it, you know.
Thank you.
So
But-
just a real quick search of 2021. There have been 3,522 that's the number of people killed by distracted driving in 2021. That's posted on the NHTSA website, and we can get the granular information from the clerk of courts about how those citations happen. But that's a significant number, and with the changes in technology that warrant a law enforcement tool to help protect citizens on the roadways from distracted drivers.
Okay. With regard to the consent decree, we have to keep certain data, correct, as it pertains to tickets issued?
To
who
the
they
chair,
were
that's
issued,
correct.
is it?
That we kept those type of data anyway, but yeah, we are required by consent decree to keep certain data.
So from a standpoint of distracted driver, people on cell phone, is it broken down even to that level, or?
To the chair, we can find out if a
Okay.
cell phone may have been involved or some type of device was involved.
Thank you, thank you. Whatever data you can supply us between now and the Finance Committee would be greatly appreciated. Any other questions? Okay, ordinance number 1023-2023. There's two. Madam Clerk, please call the roll on this piece. Yes.
I'm not sure.
You got to vote. Here.
Did we hold it?
Did you mean House Jones?
No, that was Councilman Jones, but he's not here.
Can we hold it?
Keep,
Chair, can I,
wait.
I don't want to interrupt, I just wanted to offer
We're
something.
under a roll call.
Oh, my apologies.
Okay. We'll come back to you. Keep going.
No.
Yes. No.
No, because I'm not sure.
Okay. It will go on to the Finance Committee as I'll relieve it to go on to the Finance Committee.
Excuse
Thank
me,
you.
I have a question.
Yes.
How, if the vote is 3-3, how does it pass on? Does it
It
not?
doesn't, we can move it on, but it's not approved. Yeah.
Okay. I just need to
Yeah,
get,
we'll go to the Finance Committee then,
but how does it?
as not approved.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
can someone tell me like the legislative parliamentary procedure of how that happens?
You're asking a question?
Yeah, I'm asking a
Okay.
question.
Would you
Because
care
to
for
my
the-
understanding, and
The vote was 3-3, and I've indicated
does not
that I'm
pass.
going to relieve it to the Finance Committee. I can do that.
that-
Okay, she has no idea. Okay, well, if the attorney has no idea, but okay. We'll have that discussion. Thank you, members. Ordinance number 1387-2023 by Council Members Polensek and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Safety to apply for and accept a grant from the Ohio Office of Criminal Justice Services for fiscal year 2022 Ohio Drug Law Enforcement Fund grant for the operation of the Cartel Gang Narcotics and Laundering Task Force, formerly known as the Northern Ohio Law Enforcement Task Force, authorizing the director to enter into agreements with the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office and other entities, and authorizing the purchase by one or more contracts for one or more undercover police vehicle to implement the grant. It came to us in December 4th of 2023. It's been approved by the Finance Director, approved by the Director of Finance. There's no legal objection to the piece of legislation. Director and Chief.
Council through the Chair, I would like to first allow Lieutenant Kincaid and Don Hartsong to introduce themselves. You want to grab one of the microphones? Yeah.
To the Chair and to the committee, my name is Dawn Hartsong. I'm the Grants Coordinator for the Department of Public Safety.
Lieutenant Kevin Kincaid. I'm the co-commander of the Cartel Gang Narcotics and Laundering Task Force.
Thank you. Council through the Chair, if passed by Council, ordinance number 1387-2023 would authorize the Director of Public Safety to apply for and accept a grant in the amount of $137,013.70 for the Ohio Office of Criminal Justice Services for fiscal year 2022 Ohio Drug Law Enforcement Fund grant. This legislation would provide funding for the operation of the Cartel Narcotics and Laundering Task Force, also known as Signal, CGNL, which was formerly known as the Northern Ohio Law Enforcement Task Force, or NOLETF. This grant requires a cash match of $45,671.23. The goal of the Ohio Office of Criminal Justice Services Justice Assistance Grant, or JAG grant, is to provide funding to law enforcement agencies for operating multi-agency task forces. The City of Cleveland will be reimbursed for costs associated with the operation under Signal. The Signal is a multi-agency drug task force that brings together local, state, and agents, federal agents, and investigators to ensure the most sophisticated investigation and prosecution resources are directed against organized drug trafficking groups. The agencies that partner in Signal include, of course, the Cleveland Division of Police, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Ohio, the Internal Revenue Service, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, U.S. Coast Guard, Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, the Ohio Adult Parole Authority, Ohio State Highway Patrol, Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office, Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office, the Ottawa County Drug Task Force, Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority Police, the law enforcement entities of Bedford, Ohio, Brooklyn, Ohio, Independence, Moreland Hills, North Royalton, Parma, and Shaker Heights. The expenses to be reimbursed include $42,000 for police officer overtime, $28,000 for police officer overtime for partner agencies under contracts, $7,000 in travel-related expenses and training, $39,000 for undercover vehicle and vehicle equipment, $1,000 for office supplies, $9,870 vehicle maintenance GPS data fees, $55,814.93 for buy money and surveillance costs, for a total of $182,684.93. The grant funds are $137,013.70 with a matching fund of $45,671.23 for a total of the $182,684.93. The grant period is from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. We have received this grant annually since 2005. And I know Lieutenant Kincaid and the chief can address it, but this has been a critical tool to controlling the flow of drugs, the organized distribution of drugs in Northeast Ohio, and it has been successful in taking drugs and guns off of the streets, and this grant is important to those operations.
Chief?
To the chair, to all the council members, I have to echo Director Howard as well. This grant is extremely important to our efforts in making sure that we stop the flow of illegal drugs into our community. And Signal, what they're doing there is phenomenal work with our partners. And this grant gives them the ability, the opportunity, and the resources to continue on our efforts to stop the flow of drugs into our community and hold those responsible for bringing the illicit drug into our community. So I support this grant.
Okay. Do you have any, to the chief, to the director, do you have any statistics?
We have statistics that are being gathered for the 2023 annual report. We
Okay.
did provide some in the mid-year report
Okay.
for 2023, but we want to make sure that these numbers are gathered, vetted, and accurate in that report. That report we'll have a electronic draft to council by the end of the month.
I don't know, I'm going to ask this question, but I don't know because you have it broken down. Within that data, would you have, as it pertains to the arrest and/or confiscation pertaining to fentanyl, would it be a part of that data?
To the chair, that's correct. And Lieutenant Kincaid, who's a co-commander,
Okay.
can articulate that much more clearly than I can. But yes, that would be part of it.
Lieutenant?
Through the chair to the council, I can tell you that throughout 2023, as we wrap up our statistics for the year for our reporting, we do have already calculated at least almost a record year for us as far as fentanyl is concerned. We're looked at 76.66 pounds of fentanyl that was seized by the Signal Task Force in 2023. These are long-term investigations that are far-reaching. These funds are extremely important to conducting these operations. Our investigators are often traveling to California, Arizona, Las Vegas, and actually apprehending and investigating the head of organizations that are supplying the drugs to our city.
Okay.
That's why it's important to have these funds.
Give that amount that you confiscated again.
To the chair, I believe it's 76 pounds, but again, we're still calculating all the figures.
Okay. That would be enough to kill everybody in the city of Cleveland and beyond.
I can't say that for sure, sir, but I can tell you that the way that it's spoken about is 1 microgram of fentanyl can,
Right.
kill people. So certainly that's a massive, potentially dangerous amount of fentanyl.
Okay. So again, I would hope, and then the only other request I would make, if you can provide to us as well, I don't know if that has to be a part of your document or not, but number of fentanyl deaths within the city of Cleveland. I'll
Yes,
ask
sir.
it.
I can, through the chair to the council, I can tell you that in 2023, our heroin-involved death investigation team, which the Signal Task Force supports as well, responded to 323 fatal overdose deaths in the city of Cleveland. That doesn't mean that there were only 323 fatal overdose deaths. That's just what they were called out to. The medical examiner could determine later that maybe it wasn't a heroin-related or opioid-related death.
Yeah.
But that was a slight decrease from 2022,
Okay.
which we're hopeful and happy for. However, it is still a massive amount of overdose deaths that are unacceptable.
Okay, members of the committee, questions? Councilman Slave? Thank you. Anyone else besides Councilman Slave? Councilman Starr?
Just, thank you. For clarification, this is the grant and then we match, and it's the case that Cleveland essentially administers the Cartel Gang Narcotics and Laundering Task Force, which includes other agencies. Is that correct?
Through the chair to the council, that is absolutely correct. The task force is co-commanded by myself and a supervisory special agent from the FBI. The Cleveland Police and the FBI make up the majority, have the biggest footprint on the task force, and then we're supported by approximately 19 to 20 additional agencies. Each agency brings with it a unique resource and investigative capability that helps us put together these far-reaching long-term investigations.
Okay, thank you. And when it comes to those other agencies and municipalities' participation, is that basically in-kind participation? Is that financial? Is it a combination of the two?
Through the chair to the council, the outside agency participation is based on personnel. So they assign personnel to work on the task force full-time. And with that, some places maybe an analyst, and they may bring some sort of special equipment capability that we wouldn't have otherwise.
Okay, then it's not a loaded question. I'm supportive of the legislation. I'm just always interested in understanding, how through Cleveland's general fund we are working to support the larger region as it relates to various conversations about the city and the county and the region. So thank you.
If I can add, Councilman, this may be helpful, and Lieutenant Kincaid can either affirm or correct me if I'm mistaken, but it's because of the web that is organized drug trafficking. It allows these partners to go beyond Cleveland's borders and into other jurisdictions to exercise law enforcement authority. Those jurisdictions pay for their officers, and this grant helps to supplement that overtime from their so we pay for our officers, Bedford will pay for their officers, but that overtime that those agencies incur there's some of that stress is relieved from this grant, and that's one of the reasons why it's so important.
Councilman? You're good? Okay. Councilman Starr?
No, just real quick, one of the things that I am looking for through the chair as we have different initiative ordinances, different committees, and to my colleagues as well, is I'm looking to see more data. And what I mean by more data, I understand the funding overall, the total is about $182,000, but then also from that $45,000 match, all those different things. When it comes to specific departments or initiatives, I like to see those actual data for me to get understanding ahead of the time before we get the ordinance, just so I can make sure I know how this one actually worked, because I know we've got ways of doing things. We have some great things that we do. We have some things that we're working on to improve each and every day. And as I vote on things, I definitely want to be able to look at the data for that and say, okay, for example, the Cartel Gang Narcotics and Laundering Task Force, okay, they've been getting this grant since 2005. I would love to see how many years arrests they've been making throughout this time period. What they did the last 2 to 3 years as well, or last year. And how does it look as far as going at the grant? Because there may be other grants out there that's much larger if they only getting 182,000 and they are having some success. So those things are very key to me, Chairperson, as well as to the table, just so I can really understand what we are doing. I know we have provided a lot of information in the background of this ordinance, but I just want to see those for each piece of legislation when it comes to safety, so we can be able to understand what we're doing, because the men lie, women lie, but the numbers don't. And when the numbers add up, it say, okay, we might need to get more aggressive, or we might need to invest more funding into this program. We know fentanyl is in our city, and is having a negative effect in our community. We want to get those people off the street. We also want to make sure we got things in place to help the police to do their job. So those are some things I'm really just interested in. I just wanted to put that point out there. That's one of my big goals that I set for this New Year's resolution. So that's all.
Thank you. And if I, first,
Yes,
I want to thank my public safety staff because they are able to forecast some of these things. But in the mid-year report that we provide for 2023, we compare the first half of 2022 to the first half of 2023. And if I can just read the 2023 first half stats, this is just Signal from the Cartel Gang Narcotics and Laundering Task Force. 67 search warrants, 33 arrests or convictions, 10 firearms seized, 32 pounds of cocaine with a street value of $1,303,308, 112 grams of heroin, the street value of $15,456, fentanyl, 75 pounds of fentanyl were seized during the first half of 2023 with a street value of $4,438,330, fentanyl pills, 10,059 unit doses with a street value of $201,180. 2,208 pounds of marijuana with a street value of $13,024,024. Methamphetamine, 230 pounds of methamphetamines were seized during the first year. $10,551,268 is street value. Compare that, that number is staggering, and I want to compare that to the first half of 22, where only 6.43 pounds of methamphetamine were seized during that first year. And then for drug trafficking currency and proceeds seized, $1,080,835 in comparison to the first half of 2022, $788,345. So Lieutenant Kincaid is correct about the record year of that. That is on page 58 of the mid-year report, and these numbers will be provided in the end-of-year report. And those numbers also will, that report will also provide the Bureau of Special Services numbers that also show a breakdown of these drugs and the work of these folks. And yesterday, just a note, as we talk about this, yesterday was National Law Enforcement Appreciation. This is the hard work of the men and women and this collaboration, and again, that's just the Signal Task Force.
And to the chair, if I can,
So,
we track all of our stats, not only in Signal and the Bureau of Special Investigation, all of our units. We compile all the stats and so forth. So we do that every year. So that's available. And as the director said, we have the mid-year report, and we're going to have the final end-of-year report's going to have all those statistics in there as well.
Thank you. Councilman Starr?
Yeah, I think that is great. So as Chief Director just explained, those data points are something that the community needs to know. And then when we got these ordinances, like it says ordinance number -1387, 2023, put it on in there. Put it all in there so it's no confusion to what we're seeing. So therefore, as we're having this conversation at the table, we looking at the data, we hearing everything out, but we also able to say, it wasn't something I looked at in June. I also been able to say I could look at it in January when I got that ordinance. I think that'd be very helpful. Then also, let's run our media campaign about the facts too. A lot of people write and want to do interviews about the negativity, but we also want to show when we do make these busts. And to the point that I'm saying is, think it from a civilian. A civilian might made a call about something going on, and then the police was actually able to do something. Not highlight necessarily the civilian, but letting it be known in the community that you did do something. The police were able to get there and make something happen, because that narrative that the police don't do nothing is something that we often hear all the times, but you oftentimes want to be able to see the work that they do. That is very important. So that was just something I just wanted to touch bases on.
And Chair, just,
Go ahead.
if I can just
Director.
touch on this, just real brief note, is that the number from 2022 to 2023, you're gonna, and at the end of the year report, you're gonna see the difference between the previous year. Mayor Bibb has asked us what we needed. We've asked our folks doing the work what they've needed, and he's spoken with the governor, and Mayor Bibb has provided resources for us to, seriously address the fentanyl crisis, this epidemic that is happening in our city and abroad. Because things that happen outside of Cleveland affect Cleveland, and Mayor Bibb understands that, and that's why he has been, dedicated to giving us these resources that we need to combat these issues.
Thank you.
You only forgot one thing in that statement. Council provided.
Well, we're sitting at your house, Council. I think that goes without saying.
Okay.
We're sitting here asking
Okay.
for this legislation, and I'll
Okay.
tell you, I don't want that to go unnoticed. That this is a legislative and executive branch concern. We have
It is.
concern about every. Listen, and when I tell you, the chief and I talk about this every death, right? If we talk and we analyze these deaths, and we do ask ourselves, what could we do different?
Yeah.
What resources do we need to deploy? What technology is out there? What training is out there? What communication are we not having? And those are the things that's what Mayor Bibb expects us to do. That's what you expect us to do.
Thank you, Director. Councilman Starr brings up a very valid point. As we go into 2024, and we look at the summaries, whatever additional data you can provide to us in the summaries would be very helpful. Because it might cut down on questions, but also it gives us a better view as to what has transpired in the course of the year or whatever the case may be. Data is important, and obviously we're going to be seeking more data as we go forward, as we move toward the budget hearings, as we have been requesting. So again, whatever you can provide to us to give us a better scope and bigger picture of what is transpiring would be very helpful. Any other questions of the committee? If not, ordinance number 1387-2023 is approved as read. Please sign it up, my colleagues. I'll pass it here. Our next piece is ordinance number 1364-2023 by Council Members Polensek and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Safety to apply for and accept a grant for the United States Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance for fiscal year 23, Connect and Protect grant to enter into various written standard purchases and requirement contracts, and authorizing the director to enter one or more contracts with various agencies, entities, or individuals to implement the grant and to accept a gift of a portion of the cash match from the Cleveland Foundation. First came to us on November 27th, first reading, 2023, approved by Director of Public Safety, approved by Director of Finance. There is no legal objection to the ordinance. Whoever would care to comment?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to first allow our colleagues who come to the table to introduce themselves.
Okay.
Dave Margolius, Director of Public Health.
Angela Cece, Senior Strategist for Public Safety and Health.
Okay. Who wants to kick this off?
Lieutenant John Mullen. I'm the Crisis Intervention Team Coordinator.
Okay.
Thank you. Council, the Chair,
Sure.
passed by Council Ordinance Number 1364-2023 would authorize the Director of Public Safety to apply for and accept a grant in the amount of $549,998 from the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance for fiscal year 2023 Connect and Protect grant. This legislation would provide funding for the modernization of the city's 911 system to better respond to crisis calls for service. This grant requires a cash match of $283,334. This grant will provide funding for the modernization of the city's 911 system to better respond to crisis calls for service. Primary activities include hiring clinician dispatchers, providing a mental health training to all dispatchers, and purchasing data collection software and licenses to be used for information sharing by all partner agencies. The agencies that partner with the city are the Adams Board of Cuyahoga County, Frontline Services, and the Cleveland Department of Health. The expenses to be reimbursed, and this is over a 3-year period. Year one for contract, $68,840 for data collection software, $27,160 for travel related to training. That's for a total of $96,000 for year one. Year two is $75,006 for clinician dispatchers, fringe benefits, $23,590 for clinician dispatchers, contracts in the amount of $55,404 for data collection software and training, and overtime for partner agencies for a total of $154,000. And year 3 for personnel, $255,000 for clinician dispatchers, fringe benefits, $80,198 for clinician dispatchers, $30,134 for database software under contracts, and a subawards of $218,000 for partner agency contracts. That total is $583,332. Year 3 total is $833,332. The grant funds are in the amount of $549,998, with a matching fund of $283,334 for a total of $83,332. The grant period is from October 1, 2023 to September 30th, 2026.
Okay. So the city's financial commitment to this is $283,334, correct?
Yes.
Through the chair,
200.
we're getting $100,000 from the Cleveland Foundation, so it'll be $100,000 minus that.
Okay, so then it's going to be what? $183,000. Okay. That would be our financial commitment. Those funds come from where? Those general fund dollars?
I believe they're coming from the Law Enforcement Trust Fund.
Law Enforcement Trust Fund, okay. Okay, any other comments? Walk us through this. How do you, Director Margolis, how do you perceive this to work?
Great. Yeah, I'll start just high level and then introduce Angela Cece's, who this body authorized the creation of her position November 2022 with our Joint Safety and Health Committee. So this is just basically an opportunity for us to continue to improve what we do in 911 dispatch by adding not only mental health dispatchers, so train clinicians like social workers to handle some crisis calls, but also to train the rest of the dispatchers with some of those same skills.
So how many actual folks that we have there that you define as social workers or having the clinical skills besides our dispatchers?
So the first year is a planning year, so I think the exact numbers will be figured out, but looks like ballpark, I think 1 in year 2 and a 3 in year 3, but it's to be determined.
So that will be on around the clock? All 3 platoons?
To the chair, I would say the hours are to be determined.
Yeah, that's to be determined.
Okay.
They'll be housed. Again, all this is to be determined. Ultimately, we'd like to have 4 to 5. Again, we'll have to work out the particulars, Chair. But having these mental health dispatchers is critical to provide the needs of our community, that our folks that are in crises, to make sure that we have the right response to those folks that may be experiencing some type of crisis.
Okay. Young lady, would you care to comment?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think that there's a lot of people working on beefing up our crisis services in Ohio and then here locally. We have a lot of programs nationally that we're going to be looking at and talking to figure out what works best for Cleveland moving forward.
Okay. Questions of the committee. Councilman Slife, Councilwoman House-Jones.
Thank you. Just a comment on I'm looking at the executive summary. I stumbled for a moment. It says expenses to be reimbursed. It should probably just be expenses, because expenses to be reimbursed makes it sound like we're getting reimbursed for our matching grant, which is a fun way to make money, but probably not what's happening. I'll just say that as this rolls out more, speaking personally, but perhaps for others, I do think that there is an educational component for council and others about, one, how this works mechanically. I think this is something that philosophically, in the abstract, makes a lot of sense, but understanding a call comes in and how is it routed towards a mental health co-response or a more traditional police response is something that I don't entirely understand. So it would be useful to kind of almost a site visit to see how that happens in live time. The other aspect of that is on the way home from Atlanta at National League of Cities, I took the RTA home, and I had like a 4-minute layover at the West Park Rapid Station, and there was a woman there very clearly having a mental health issue. And I reflect on it because I wasn't sure, just as a citizen, what is the correct thing for me as someone witnessing someone very clearly going through something to do, and it's just sort of like you get on the bus and you're like, oh, I hope that worked out all right. So I think that there is a component of public education so that we can help people understand how they can connect people to resources through calling 911 or in lieu of calling 911. So.
To the chair, to Councilman's life, that's a really excellent point, and that's part of the reason why we have this grant coming. I think in the abstract you're right, but in a more practical sense, which I like to deal with practicality, is just what you're talking about. That's a great example that you gave. You see someone, they're having some type of episode. Traditionally, what people would do is call 911 or the non-emergency number to get a police response. If that happened in that particular case, what we're hoping for with this grant is that we'll have a mental health dispatcher there, triage that call from you or wherever they may be, say, well, this is not necessarily a co-response, this is more a care response. And then rather than having a law enforcement respond, we have a clinician respond to deal with that particular situation. So I appreciate that, and part of our responsibility on this side is to make sure that we have that type of communications out to not only you, but also our general public.
My final question, just if whoever could help me kind of understand the difference between two sections. So section 2 says that the cash match of just 183, exclusive of the Cleveland Foundation donation, notes the specific subfund that it would come from, but then section 9 has what might be some stock language about, and any other funds approved by the Director of Finance. Which one carries the day? Is it required to come out of that subfund, or is the subfund sort of there as an aspiration, but it could really come out of any subfund based on section 9?
Director, if you can answer that, I don't know if you can or not.
I don't want to speak for finance because that's
Right.
not my wheelhouse, but
Yeah.
what I will say is that my understanding, Dr. Margolis can correct me if I'm mistaken, or Don Hartsong, is that if there is a need, if we get this off the ground and it's going very well, and if there is a need, there is some flexibility for us to not be restricted from doing what we seem to be doing well, to be restricted by those funds. But I would really like to defer that response to the finance department.
Yeah.
But that would be my understanding, is that we just don't want to stifle a much needed initiative in the city as an alternative for police response, or by the strict hard numbers.
Director?
Yeah, through the chair to the council member, I don't read them as contradictory, because I think it's designated the certain fund in section 2, but that's just the city, the donation, where the donation's going to go from Cleveland Foundation, and then section 9 says for all 283,000, it's wherever the finance director tells us.
And just as a point of clarification, that's our fund is going to be coming from the general fund. It's not the law enforcement trust fund. I've just been informed.
Okay.
So it's the general fund.
Well, obviously, to go out to finance, so between now and finance, if you can just pin that down. Councilman?
That was going to be my
Okay,
request.
I just want to have, in the course of putting together this entire concept, an initiative, have we looked at any other cities?
Through the chair to the council member, so the beauty of this grant is year one is a planning grant
Pull your mic
from the
close.
Bureau of Justice
Yeah.
Assistance. So they want us to travel and learn from other cities in that first year. So there will be travel and just mutual learning from other cities.
But we haven't looked at any other cities prior to this?
So I've had meetings with Chicago.
Okay.
Chicago currently has multiple different response options, and they also have clinicians, or they're working on their program to embed clinicians in 911.
Okay.
They have started looking through, they're called triaging system. So I've been meeting with them. I actually have a meeting coming up. And then Cincinnati doesn't have clinicians embedded yet, but they're looking at that as
Okay.
well. And then Harris County, Texas, actually, I've had a meeting with them where they have clinicians in dispatch. So we have a lot of models across the country we can look at and look into.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Councilwoman House Jones?
Good morning. Thank you through the chair to the team that we have here. A couple of things, just so that I am, this grant was for the purpose of really trying to enhance our dispatch system, correct? And so how is that integrated with the co-responder activities that we currently have going on? Or how do you envision it?
Yeah,
Let me
who
ask
can
that
answer
question.
I would like to, and then Angela can jump in as well, to the chair, the council person. We currently, as you know, already have a co-responder unit. This will enable us to have, when we receive calls in the 911 center or the non-emergency, to have a clinician, a trained clinician. And we're hoping that we'll get all of our dispatchers trained. They'll not be clinicians, but we'll train to triage calls when they come into our 911 center, our communication center, to discern and triage their calls, see which would be the best response for that particular situation. If it's a care response, which Dr. Margolis and his staff is working on, which is not a police response, then that's who would be responsible for that particular incident. If it's a co-response, because there's a level of danger potentially, then it's going to be a co-response. So that's why this plays in there very well, I believe, because that professional clinician and our trained dispatchers will be able to discern, triage that call, and then hopefully, not hopefully, there's no hopefully, will dispatch the appropriate response to that particular crisis or that situation.
So just to follow up through the chair to the team that we have in front of it. So the intent is to actually see, as we have calls coming into 911, to be able to appropriately dispatch the correct team. Care response, meaning someone in
Non-law enforcement.
non-law enforcement, right. So, because again, we've been, okay, I just want to get some clarity that we are all, where there's a shared understanding of where we're going or trying to go. So the care response would be a non-police response, the co-response with a health professional and law enforcement, and then what we traditionally know as a safety response with law enforcement. Are there any other options that we are exploring out of those three potential opportunities in response, with the idea by 2026 we would have each of those threes firmly shored up to have a system that is more responsive based on the calls that are coming into the city of Cleveland?
Yeah, just
Through the chair.
through the chair to Councilwoman House Jones, we are working actively with the Adams Board, who has recently come out to talk about a care response model. So that would be a licensed clinician with a peer support specialist. So this is really a both and. It's to enhance all of the response options we have in the city and make sure that we're responding effectively and correctly to the right scenario being presented through our 911 dispatch and through 988. We're going to integrate the whole crisis system. It's going to take some time, but I think that we're all dedicated at this table and then across the city who's all involved in outreach and crisis response. So we're all coordinating actively throughout the week to make this best case scenario.
Okay, thank you for that. And so, just following up, so this goes back to, because I've still had this question out there about what has indicated that for every 911 call, we have to send a police officer out there. And no one has actually explicitly gave me like, no, because someone calls 911, we have to send a police officer. No, like I'm trying to understand just that fundamental point.
Who can answer that?
If I can, because if I can, and maybe some others would like to chime in as well, to the chair, to Councilwoman House Jones. When a call comes in 911, not all 911 calls will necessitate a law enforcement response. That's part of the triaging, not necessarily mental health, but part of the triaging and the training that our dispatchers are I believe, do a really, really good job to triage those calls, decide whether or not there needs to be a law enforcement response. And if that decision is made based on their training, then obviously then our officers will respond according to the call for service. And hopefully, once we get this particular care response, we already have co-response, get the clinicians and their dispatchers and so forth, we're going to enhance our abilities to service our community much better by being able to triage those calls even more effectively to make sure that we have the right response to that particular situation, or as we are here for, those crisis situations, that again, if it's going to be a co-response, it's a non-law enforcement response. If it's a co-response, it's with a law enforcement professional that's there with a clinician to handle that particular situation, or maybe through the 988, I believe, that you'll have a totally different response. Maybe that particular person, with the help of someone else, will be able to get the help that they need. Then you don't have either a care response or co-response. And again, for us, it's just having the various options available to people that may be in a crisis, where maybe a family member will be able to take that particular person for help versus calling for the care response or the co-response.
And if I can just add to that, if you don't mind, Councilwoman, is that that's the importance of us updating and enhancing our 911 system, is so that our call takers and dispatchers are receiving the appropriate information to make that determination. Because I can tell you, everyone at this table agrees that the police may not be appropriate, are not appropriate for every single call. But the way that that determination is made is from the questions asked and the answers received from and to our 911 call takers and dispatchers, so that we can make sure we get the appropriate care out.
And through the chair, to the council member, I like your line of questioning, because folks should recognize that if you call 911 and say, I'm having a heart attack, you're not getting police, you're getting our EMS colleagues. So that model already exists, where we don't have to send the police to every call.
Okay, thank you. Last two things. The one thing that I know part of this grant indicates to provide mental health training to all dispatchers. So it got me to thinking a question: are not all first responders trained and get provided mental health training? So we're starting with dispatchers, but then I'm thinking into law enforcement, fire, EMS. Is that not a part of just fundamental training, mental health training?
Whoever can answer that.
To the chair, to Councilman, and I don't know if Lieutenant wants to chime in down there as well. Angela as well, I think, wants to chime in. Let's start with our dispatchers. Right now, all of our dispatchers get some level of mental health training. That's happening right now through the Adams Board. They're training our dispatchers, but not to the level that we want. And they do a phenomenal job. And once we have the licensed clinicians there, the dispatchers, it's going to enhance dispatch even more. And our officers get some level of training through the Adams Board as well, through our in-service training to handle folks that are in crises. That's also part of our crisis training. All of our officers, every single one of our officers in the Division of Police receive crisis training, and that's part of our in-service. We also have the 40-hour training, which is specialized CIT officers. We have, and I don't know the exact number, Lieutenant Mullen can fill you in on that and give you the precise numbers, but every single officer, Councilwoman House Jones, receive crisis training every year, at least 4 hours, and then we have the specialized CIT officers.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. Through the chair to the team. So this is one of the things, because I'm more of a systems thinker, like understanding the day and time where we are after the global pandemic, which we are going to be dealing with the ramifications of COVID-19 for at least a decade. To me, it seems, while we are doing these things, I think we need to put some emphasis on the actual curriculum development of all first responders. 4 hours is not enough when you are already, your job is crisis. If your job is a crisis, why is the crisis training secondary? That's just me, though. That's just me. So I mean, it's a bit odd. So I know I'm gonna see if I can work with the policy team to really try to understand, for the certifying bodies and entities and things of that nature, how we actually prioritize crisis training for the individuals who are supposed to be the crisis experts, which all first responders are. But I hear you. And then I'll just end with just a thought, because I would be remiss if I would not say the family of Tanisha Anderson, who unfortunately lost her life in this city due to a crisis, has been, really working with me and a group of students at Case Western Reserve University to really think of how do we legally put on the books more of a care response legally in our framework. And I did make a commitment to them that I would be a partner and be an advocate to lift them up. I know they think that I have forgotten, but I have not forgotten. I have not. So it is good to hear that we are going in this direction. But again, to Tanisha's family and her uncle in particularly, who has been lifting this up consistently, I will be circling back around to see how we can bring to fruition desires and turn a tragedy in our community, and to let them know that we have not forgotten their love for Tanisha. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other questions of the committee? Without objection, ordinance number 1364-2023 is approved as read. Please sign it up. Okay, to the director, to the chief, we're looking for now end-of-year updates with regard to police, fire, EMS, animal control. We'll start with Division of Police. There is some information on your screen as it pertains to questions we have asked. And so whoever wants to lead off, be my guest.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
We do have the answers to the questions that were asked. I just want to make sure that that you and the rest of council are aware that we, for the last few years, we've been putting together the end of year report.
Yes.
That compiles
Right.
a lot of the questions that council has asked and other questions that we know have come from the public. We seriously vet those numbers for accuracy. So there's some questions that and I just wanted to make it aware that some of those questions might be that it's being vetted, so
Okay.
that we can make sure it's coming out
Okay.
accurately.
Thank you. Okay. Who wants to lead off?
Sure. So we'll talk about police first.
Yes.
Is that we have, as we have come out of the pandemic, as Councilwoman House has stated, I mean it has had effects of people being isolated.
Yes.
and social interaction minimized, and law enforcement, EMS, fire were all impacted by COVID, and those who seek to do harm in the city and to the nation nationally, we've seen that rise in crime. And jurisdictions around the country, Cleveland is not excluded from that, are working diligently to combat that crime, increase our staffing, provide updated training to trends that are happening around the country. And last year was trying. We had the motor vehicle thefts. We had rough periods of violence, felonious assaults and homicides. We made adjustments, and we ended 2023 a couple homicides under 2022. We saw a sharp decline in motor vehicle thefts, in large part due to the hard work of the men and women of the Division of Police and the intelligence that we were receiving from the community. And we are continuing to make those adjustments as we go into 2024 to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to hold those accountable and create a safer city. So the chief has some numbers from our final SERP. Again, those numbers are going to have to be compiled and vetted for our annual report, but we're happy to answer any questions that council may have with regard to the Division of Police. I'll ask the chief if he has any statements that he'd like to add.
Thank you, Director, and to the chair and council members. As Director indicated, last year was trying for various reasons. As he stated, we came in under the 2022 numbers relative to homicides. I think in large part, again, based on the activities that we, our members through the various units, their dedication, their hard work, really taking some really bad characters, I believe, off the street that were creating a lot of havoc in our various neighborhoods. So I want to commend the men and women of the Cleveland Division of Police and our partner agencies that assisted us to really try to get a handle on some of the violent crime that was taking place in our community. We are going to double our efforts from last year with our members, again, and our partners to continue to work diligently to tap down the violence, remove individuals from our community that are trigger pullers, as we call them, that, again, that are creating so much havoc in our neighborhoods. And that, again, that's through our partnership, not only with the state troopers, but with the FBI, ATF, and the various details we have set up, and also plans that we have that I really can't discuss at this particular table to get us ready for this year, 2024 and beyond, to hold folks accountable for the criminal activity that's taking place in our community. And again, in large part, I believe we are where we are because, again, of the hard work, dedication of the men and women in the Cleveland Division of Police, and again, with our partnerships. I'm very happy of Mayor Bibb's efforts in helping us, providing the tools that we need to enhance our recruitment, which I believe we are moving in the right direction relative to our recruitment.
Okay.
I'm really excited about that, and then the salaries for the officers, again, which also helps with our retention and also our recruitment efforts. So we're ready and able and willing to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chief. Jake, thank you. So the statistics you provided to us, 22 officers were hired in 2023, 33 in 2022. As of today, there's 1,175 officers on the force. That number obviously concerns all of us. Concerns me greatly because those are numbers that I have never experienced in my time here at City Hall.